Growing up in the heart of a bustling city, I never imagined I'd one day seek solace in a small town. My early years were a whirlwind of crowded streets, endless noise, and a family life that teetered on chaos. My parents worked tirelessly to provide for us, but their efforts came at the cost of our connection. As a teenager, I found solace in fixing old cars with my uncle, who owned a garage on the outskirts of town. That's where I first discovered the satisfaction of creating something functional from a pile of rusted parts. Life took a turn when I met Willa. She was magnetic, with a charm that drew everyone into her orbit. At 18, I thought I'd found my soulmate. We married young, spurred by a pregnancy that neither of us was prepared for. My uncle gifted me his garage as a wedding present, and for a while, I believed we were building a life together, but cracks began to show when our ambitions diverged. I was content running the garage, but Willa had grander dreams and a growing disdain for small-town life. Our marriage became a battleground of unmet expectations and simmering resentments. I tried to hold on, believing love and hard work could mend the growing rift. But then came the betrayals, the late-night phone calls, the unexplained absences, and finally, the discovery of an affair. The unraveling wasn't sudden. It was a slow, painful process that left me questioning everything I thought I knew. Leaving wasn't easy. By the time I packed my truck and drove away, I had endured years of manipulation and lies. I chose a path of complete reinvention, shedding the identity that had tied me to Willa and the pain she inflicted. My destination was unclear, but I knew I needed distance, both physical and emotional, from the life I'd once cherished. When I arrived in this small town, I was a broken man. My only possessions were a few tools, a battered work truck, and the resolve to start over. This place wasn't paradise, but it offered something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Slowly, I rebuilt not just a business, but a version of myself I could be proud of. Here, I discovered the resilience to face my past and the courage to embrace a future that was entirely my own. I found myself spending many quiet Saturday afternoons in the dimly lit corner of a bar at the edge of town. This unassuming spot became a haven, a place I had stumbled upon during one of my lonely walks not long after relocating here. Back then, I had left behind what I once thought was my paradise: my home, my memories, and my past. Amid the upheaval, this bar transformed into a steady refuge where I could gather my thoughts and regain a sense of calm. Shortly after my arrival, I purchased an old gas station and garage that had been sitting vacant for 2 years. The seller, eager to be rid of the property, quickly accepted my modest offer despite its state of disrepair. While it was far from perfect, I saw promise in the crumbling structure. That deal marked a pivotal moment, a chance to rebuild my life and begin anew, far removed from the betrayal and turmoil I had left behind. One of my first major projects was to expand the property by adding a retail store facing the gas pumps. I envisioned it as a convenient spot for locals, especially after the town's only grocery store closed early each evening. I also modernized the gas pumps, installing a pay-at-the-register system and moving the underground tanks to improve accessibility and safety. The effort was worth it. The upgrades created more parking space and boosted the station's visibility. The changes paid off. The store quickly became a hub of activity in the evenings, bustling with customers from 7 p.m. to midnight, while the gas station ran 24/7. The garage, located behind the main lot, kept regular hours during the week. Saturdays became my personal time, a day I spent in the garage working on side projects, a ritual I came to look forward to. Introducing liquor to the store's inventory initially ruffled some feathers, particularly at the local bar, but my goal was never competition. The station was about building stability and creating jobs in a small town where opportunities were scarce. Over time, the community came to see it as an asset rather than a threat. Farming was the backbone of this place, and many young people left as soon as they could. For those who stayed, the station became a lifeline, a reliable part of daily life. Much of the store's success was due to a woman I hired early on. She had an incredible eye for organization and completely restructured the store's layout, making it more efficient and profitable. Within months, her efforts helped me recover the equity loan I had taken out to fund the upgrades. Fridays and Saturdays became especially busy, with customers stopping by for snacks after a night at the bar. Sundays brought steady sales as well, with cold beer flying off the shelves. This particular Saturday, I was nursing a double shot of Jack Daniels with a glass of ice water and a lemon wedge. Earlier that day, I'd finished a painstaking project, replacing the steering column in an old family truck from the 1940s. It had taken me 8 months to find the right part, and even then I'd had to fabricate some pieces by hand. The truck wasn't just a vehicle, it was a legacy, cherished by its owner, who clearly had no plans to retire it anytime soon. Between 4 and 7, the bar was my favorite place to be. By that time, the dinner crowd had dispersed, leaving behind a serene atmosphere. Later in the evening, live music would draw a livelier crowd. The bar had a rich history. Farmers once brought their daughters here for dances and social gatherings. Over the 6 years I'd lived here, I'd built a reputation and formed bonds with the community. People looked out for one another in this town, often giving me a heads up if anything unusual was happening. I had a routine, one visit to the bar each week, always on Saturday, always at the same time. It was my ritual, a chance to reflect in peace before heading home. But this Saturday, my routine was disrupted. My tranquility shattered the moment I saw them walk in. I recognized them immediately. The woman was my ex-wife's twin sister, and the young man with her was someone I had once called my son. Their presence didn't stir any fond nostalgia, only the sharp sting of betrayal I'd spent years trying to bury. They were a living reminder of a time when I was blind to the truth, even as it stared me in the face. The young man, had grown considerably. His features were sharper, more defined, and he now bore a striking resemblance to his biological father. Seeing him was a painful affirmation of a truth I had long known but tried to forget. The question that loomed now was why they were here, seeking me after all this time. I watched as they approached the bartender. The woman pulled a photo from her purse, showing it to him. He glanced at it, said something brief, and then they turned and walked out. Relief washed over me as they left without recognizing me. My long, scruffy hair, full beard, and slimmer frame had rendered me nearly unrecognizable. For the moment, my disguise and my peace remained intact. About half an hour later, the bartender approached my table. I leaned back in my chair and asked casually, "What's going on, Tom?" Tom pulled out a chair, sat down across from me, and replied, "They were looking for you. Apparently they heard you were living around here and wanted to confirm it. They asked me to give you a message." "What's the message?" I asked. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "They said Willa has terminal cancer. She doesn't have long and wants to make peace." I let the words sink in before responding. "And what did you tell them?" "I played dumb," he said with a smirk. "I told them I didn't know you. Even looked at their photo and pretended not to recognize it." I nodded, mulling it over. "The woman is my ex-wife's twin sister. The boy is her son, the one she passed off as mine for years. Do you think they're telling the truth?" Tom hesitated, then shrugged. "Maybe partly, but they're definitely holding something back." I lit a cigarette, tearing off the filter first, and took a slow drag. "That's exactly what I expected. They've always been masters of deception. What they show you is never the full story." Tom gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder before returning to the bar. Left alone, my mind drifted back 7 years to the day I left. I told them I wouldn't be back for 7 years, and they laughed, thinking I was being dramatic. What they didn't realize was that I meant every word. A few weeks before I left, I discovered that the youngest child I thought was mine wasn't. He was my brother-in-law's son. That revelation unraveled everything, sending me on a search for answers that changed my life forever. The proof came from a family member who'd seen it all and referred to them as black witches, women who thrived on manipulation and cruelty. Around the same time, I discovered an insurance policy Willa had recently taken out on me, a policy with a double indemnity clause for accidental end of life. If I died in an accident, the payout would have been $4 million. An elder in the family warned me to leave immediately, and I listened. By the time I drove away, my work truck was packed with everything I valued from our 16-year marriage. I didn't look back. I hit the county road, turned right, and by the time I stopped driving, I was 2 states away. I'll admit, some of this was my fault. I got Willa pregnant when she was 16, and I was an 18-year-old kid who thought he could take on the world. Pressured by my family to do the right thing, we got married that summer. 2 more kids followed soon after. They thought it was all a joke. Even after I left, Willa told our daughters, "He'll come back once he cools off. He just needs to find his sense of humor." But their laughter ended abruptly a few hours later when a deputy from the sheriff's department showed up at their door. "Are you Mrs. Willa Racine?" he asked. When she confirmed, he handed her an envelope. "Ma'am, you've just been served." "What's this?" she asked with a smirk, assuming it was part of some elaborate prank. That changed the moment she opened it. That envelope held the truth they had never expected me to know. Inside were the divorce papers I had carefully prepared with my attorney. We had laid out everything in detail, every asset, every liability. The DNA results were conclusive, proving her affair with my brother-in-law. The petition included explicit evidence, dates, times, places, receipts from their hotel stays, and even photos provided by a supplier who'd witnessed their escapades. Additionally, the legal packet included a sealed letter addressed to her sister. When she opened it, she learned I was suing her husband for unpaid child support, infidelity, and defamation. That's when the laughter truly stopped. I was no longer the punchline of their private joke. I was the one who had turned the tables. To them, I had always been the golden goose. Everything I touched seemed to succeed, and money had never been an issue. As a result, Willa and the kids had lived a life of comfort, never wanting for anything. But that afternoon, Willa discovered just how much control I had taken back. I had sold 3 of my businesses, paid off all our debts, and liquidated the 2 apartment buildings we owned for a tidy profit. I canceled every credit card and removed my name from all joint accounts. I even signed over my half of the house to her and walked away with half our net worth in cash. The only condition? She had to agree to the divorce. In one move, I reduced their monthly cash flow from $10,000 to 0. Willa's sister also learned the hard way that their scheming came at a price. My attorney froze all their assets before they could touch them. By the time the divorce was finalized, they were flat broke. After the proceedings, my attorney called Willa into his office and handed her a check, reimbursing her for a fraction of what they had lost. "Why would you do this?" she asked, stunned. "Because for me, it was never about the money," he replied. "It's about principles, something you and your sister clearly lack. I'm giving you this so you have a chance to start over. I hope you learn from this." Whether or not they learned anything, I didn't care. For the first time in years, I was free, and I'd made it clear who had the last laugh. Willa refused to finalize the divorce unless I agreed to meet her face-to-face. That left us in a strange limbo, legally separated but not officially divorced. I saw no reason to entertain a conversation with someone who had deceived me for so many years. For the first time in her life, she was forced to earn a living, and she quickly realized just how quickly money dries up when it's not constantly flowing in. To stay ahead of the inevitable drama, I set up a system for important mail to be forwarded to a FedEx box, which then forwarded it to my work address once a week. I knew Willa and her sister too well to expect them to let go easily. Manipulating emotions and stirring up trouble were their specialties. Revenge wasn't just a possibility, it was a certainty. In their family, no one was allowed to walk away unscathed. I thought I'd distanced myself enough, but I was wrong. Tammy's appearance was proof their games weren't over. After finishing my drink, I slipped out the bar's back door, avoiding the front in case they were watching. I cut through the empty lot behind the building, wound around some back streets, and finally reached my truck. Just as I unlocked the door, a man stepped out of the shadows. "You're not easy to find, Mr. Racine," he said. "I like to keep it that way," I replied, turning to face him. "What brings you here?" "My name's Peter Edwards," he said. "I'm married to your oldest daughter, Connie." I studied him carefully. That could be a blessing or a curse, depending on whether she takes after her mother. "So, what do you want?" "I came to talk to you," he said. "There are things from the past that need settling." "Maybe so," I said evenly. "But that might go faster if your mother-in-law would sign the divorce papers." "What divorce papers?" he asked, his surprise genuine. "Follow me," I said, motioning to his car. A short drive later, I turned off the main road onto a long gravel driveway and parked in front of a farmhouse. Leading him inside to a home office, I opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder containing the divorce documents. Switching on the printer, I gestured toward the papers. "Help yourself. Make copies of whatever you need." Peter didn't need to know I didn't actually live there. I'd built the farmhouse years ago for the grand dame of our family, hoping she might leave paradise. Peter looked about 25, polished and self-assured, with the kind of demeanor that suggested a good education. Still, I couldn't shake the suspicion that he might be part of Willa and Tammy's latest scheme. He connected to my Wi-Fi and started downloading files onto his laptop. The documents included everything: detailed records, a sheriff's department report, and a letter from Willa's attorney acknowledging receipt of the money owed. The latter seemed to catch his attention the most. As he sifted through the papers, I observed his expressions closely. It was clear that much of what he read contradicted the version of events he believed. "Do you think Connie knows the truth?" Peter finally asked. "That's for you to figure out," I said. "But here's one for you. Is Willa really dying of cancer? Peter's face hardened. Who told you that? Tammy and Seth were in town today, looking for me, I replied. That's the story they told the bartender, but I know better. Willa's alive and well, living with her former lawyer. She's in a common-law marriage and expecting his second child. Peter shook his head, his frustration evident. She told me to find you so she could finalize the divorce. Said she needed it done to remarry. He pulled out his phone and called Connie, switching to speakerphone after a moment. I could hear her voice faintly in the background. Connie, Peter asked, did you know your mom lied about the divorce not being finalized? What are you talking about? She responded, confusion lacing her tone. You know Dad left because he was broke. Mom said he abandoned us. We left not long after. She told us he cleaned out what little we had and skipped town. If it weren't for stepfather, we wouldn't have made it. I'm sending you a file with the legal documents, Peter said. Have someone watch the baby and call me back once you've read it. As Peter wrapped up the call, I grabbed 2 bottles of beer from the fridge. Handing one to him, I sat back down. Why didn't you tell Connie you found me? I asked. Peter took a sip before replying. Connie and I have only been married 2 years. She just had our son 3 months ago. Honestly, I don't plan on telling anyone I found you. As far as they know, I'm just working on an investigation. He pulled out his wallet and flashed a badge identifying him as a Paradise Police Department officer. Skeptical, I opened my laptop, navigated to the department's website, and confirmed his credentials. It was a car accident report from a few months ago that helped me track you down, Peter began. Connie filed a report about your disappearance, which ended up on the wanted list. Plus, the insurance company's ruling in your favor tipped me off. So, why didn't you tell Connie you found me? I pressed. Peter leaned back, his tone cautious. While reviewing the case file, it became obvious there were some unanswered questions. First, what happened to the $250,000 cash Willa was supposed to receive along with the house deed? Second, why is everyone lying about what really happened? Sounds like you've been fed the same pack of lies I got, I said as his phone buzzed. It's my wife, Peter said, putting the call on speaker. Keep quiet. Hey, honey, Connie said, her voice tinged with disbelief. Where did you get all this? Is it true? If so, we've been lied to for years. Seth doesn't know the truth about who he is, and neither did I. My sister Karen is going to lose it. Mom pushed her away for defending Dad. Now I see it was all part of a bigger lie. Mom and Aunt Tammy gave Dad no choice but to leave. It's true, Peter confirmed. I got the records from your father's late lawyer's widow. I had to go out of state to find her. Turns out her husband kept backup files on his personal computer. From the records, it's clear your mother was served with divorce papers the same day your father left. I scribbled a note for Peter to have Connie talk to her great-aunt Josie if she was still alive. He nodded as he read it. Peter, we need to find my dad, Connie insisted. He suffered enough because of Mom and Aunt Tammy. What happened to the money she got? If she had the house, why did she sell it? And why was she planning to sue Dad for desertion? None of this makes sense. Have Karen watch the baby for a bit, Peter suggested. You talk to Aunt Josie and see what she knows. Keep this between us for now. There's a lot more to this story, and it might include some serious fraud. The real question is, why has your mom been bad-mouthing your dad all these years? After ending the call, Peter turned to me. Why do you want Connie to speak with Aunt Josie? Josie knows everything about Willa and George's affair, I explained. She practically raised the family. She always suspected Tammy and Willa were scheming together. Both George and I were pawns, but their ultimate goal was never clear. If that's true, then why? Peter asked. Josie's granddaughter Jody has tried for years to convince her to move in with her, I said. But Josie insists she won't until the whole truth is out. Jody's as private as they come, just like me. Dealing with Willa and Tammy takes a toll. Using and discarding people has been their way of life. Josie was the one who opened my eyes with the evidence she collected. Peter hesitated before asking, Do you want to know anything about your kids before I leave? Not yet, I replied firmly. I need to be sure you are who you say you are. Given the family history, this could just be another angle in their game. You might want to dig into my lawyer's sudden end of life. If Willa's planning to sue me, she's awfully confident she'll win. That makes me suspicious. Peter's face paled, and for the first time, I saw the realization dawn on him. He was beginning to understand the kind of people he'd married into. We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to keep each other updated. I walked him to the door, shook his hand, and watched as he drove away. After cleaning up, I locked the apartment and got in my car. Taking a circuitous route home, I stayed alert to ensure I wasn't being followed. The drive gave me time to process everything. Life had improved significantly since I left my past behind. Did I really want to revisit it? Knowing Willa and Tammy, they wouldn't stop until they had the upper hand. If they were out of money, their greed would only make them more desperate. When I finally arrived home, 2 little arms wrapped around my legs. I scooped up my 3- and 4-year-olds, their laughter filling the air. They were my joy, just like their mother. "Dinner's almost ready," Jody called from the kitchen. "Wash up." I grinned and obeyed. Over dinner, I told her about everything that had happened since closing the store that afternoon. I couldn't have imagined this life 7 years ago when I walked away from paradise. A little over a year ago, I had received a call from Josie asking for my help. Her granddaughter, Jody, needed to leave a failed marriage and start fresh. At the time, I barely knew her. She'd lived out of state on an army base and was 10 years younger than me. But Josie had done so much for me that I didn't hesitate to return the favor. Now, with Jody and our children, I had found the family I never knew I needed. It took me about a week to track down a 2-bedroom apartment for Jody and furnish it with the basics. In a small town, housing options were scarce, but a friend of a friend managed to pull some strings. When I arrived to pick her up, she had already taken the steps to leave her old life behind. She'd quit her job, closed her bank accounts, and packed her belongings. Her husband was away on a 2-week military training exercise, and by the time he returned, she'd be long gone. At precisely 8 o'clock that evening, I pulled into her driveway in a rented U-Haul. Her neighbors quietly pitched in, helping us load everything she wanted into the truck without making a scene. By midnight, we were on the highway, her old life disappearing in the rearview mirror. When curious bystanders asked where I was from, I simply told them it was better they didn't know. As the miles passed, Jody and I started to get acquainted. Somewhere in the middle of the night, her phone buzzed. It was her grandmother. I couldn't help but smile when I overheard Jody say, "Yes, Grandma, Art picked me up. You could have warned me he's got a rugged mountain man vibe. He might actually look handsome if he ever cleaned up." The following day, Josie contacted Jody's lawyer to have all her legal documents forwarded to my FedEx mailbox. Jody warned us both that her estranged husband might cause trouble, and I made sure to take precautions. Over the next few weeks, my suspicions about her situation proved true. Jody quickly stepped into the role of managing my store, and it didn't take long to see how much we needed her. She reorganized everything, resolved staffing issues, and transformed the business. Customers loved her warmth and professionalism, and the store thrived like never before. Jody's ex-husband didn't take her departure well. His escalating threats forced Josie to file a restraining order against him. His behavior led to a dishonorable discharge from the military, and he eventually returned to my old hometown, convinced Jody would show up there. Meanwhile, Jody became the center of attention in our small town. To fend off unwanted advances, she began wearing a diamond ring, a quiet signal that she wasn't available. It gave her the space to rebuild her life. In a matter of weeks, Jody gained the trust of the community, took over the store's bookkeeping, and became indispensable. Everyone accepted her because I vouched for her character. Her sharp wit and natural charm made her a perfect fit, and when asked about the ring or who the lucky guy was, she'd just smile and say, "That's a secret you'll have to figure out." Of course, rumors spread. Before long, people whispered that Jody and I had met online and that she was my mail-order bride. She didn't let it bother her. On Saturdays, when I worked alone, she'd bring me lunch, knowing I'd forget to eat otherwise. Those small gestures deepened our bond. It wasn't long before everyone assumed we were a couple, and invitations to events always included both of us. What had started as 2 people escaping their pasts naturally evolved into something more. Josie kept us in the loop about events back in paradise. We raised our eyebrows when we heard that Jody's ex had started cozying up to Tammy. Around the same time, Jody's divorce was finalized, marking a pivotal moment for us. That evening, we went out with friends to celebrate. Under the dim glow of the bar's lights during a slow dance, we shared our first kiss. 6 months later, we moved in together. One night, while the boys were splashing in the tub, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I grabbed a small trash bin, stood over the sink, and began shaving off my beard and mustache. By the time I finished, only stubble remained. It felt symbolic, a quiet gesture marking a new chapter in my life. When my boys saw me, they froze, staring in wide-eyed wonder. Grinning, I lathered my face with the shaving soap Jody had given me last Christmas. Then, with exaggerated care, I lathered their little faces too, pretending to shave them. Their laughter echoed through the house. Jody walked in, her blue eyes sparkling with surprise. "Well, look at this! Daddy's starting to look like his boys. What do you think? Should we cut his hair next?" "Yes!" they shouted in unison, their faces lighting up with glee. I chuckled. "Let's leave that to the barber." "Not a chance," Jody said with a mischievous grin. "I'll take care of it before you change your mind." After getting the boys ready for bed, they perched at the kitchen table to watch Jody snip away at my hair. By the time she finished, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. The floor was littered with hair, and I felt like a completely new man. "You've got talent," I told her, running a hand over my freshly trimmed head. She smiled. "Now go rinse off before you get hair all over the house." As the warm water poured over me, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. Life had taken twists and turns I never could have predicted, but here I was, content and grounded. When I stepped out, Jody was on the phone with Josie. She hung up with a worried look. "Grandma says it's time to deal with Tammy and Willow once and for all," she said. Apparently, Connie had just visited Josie and discovered something shocking. The annuities I had purchased for my children, $600 a month each, had never been paid out. Those funds were meant to replace child support, but Willa had intercepted them. It was a wild night, but I couldn't help but grin. If I'd known that shaving and cutting my hair would get this kind of reaction from Jody, I'd have done it a long time ago. For the next week, I became the target of relentless jokes from everyone who knew us. "Who are you and what did you do with Art?" they'd tease. One person even asked Jody if she'd blackmailed me into finally joining the rest of society. Jody, ever quick with a comeback, smirked and said, "I made him promise to shower at least 3 times a week." Most people laughed. A few, predictably, missed the joke entirely. But while we were enjoying lighthearted moments, trouble was brewing back in paradise. Word reached us that I was about to be sued in civil court for child abandonment, desertion, and unpaid child support. Jody and I couldn't help but find the whole idea absurd, believing it was nothing more than a desperate stunt. However, Peter, who had been keeping us informed, warned us it wasn't a joke. The DA had already hired an attorney to represent me, and they were building a solid defense. Peter shared that Willa and Tammy had siphoned off over $48,000 meant for my children. On top of that, authorities were reopening the case surrounding my former attorney's accidental end of life. If evidence held up, Willa and Tammy could face significant prison time. 7 to 10 years was the estimate. Adding to the chaos, Willa's former attorney, now her common-law husband, was under investigation and risked being disbarred. Josie had been quietly working behind the scenes. On Sunday night, she called with an update. All the necessary paperwork would be filed the next day. She emailed me a treasure trove of evidence she'd amassed over the years, including notarized statements, recorded conversations, and the contact information of several attorneys for a countersuit. Among the files was a $2 million accidental end-of-life insurance policy I hadn't even known was still active. Josie had uncovered that Willa had purchased it 6 months before I left. Jody and I spent the entire night combing through the evidence and forwarding everything to the DA's office. By dawn, we were convinced that the lawsuit against me was a ruse, a trap to lure me back to paradise for a setup. Jody immediately contacted one of the attorneys Josie had recommended, sent over the documents, and retained their services with a significant deposit. We were prepared. The moment Willa's legal team filed their lawsuit, our lawyer would respond with a countersuit. That Friday, Jody told me Josie was on her way, with guests. They'd left paradise under the cover of darkness, stopping at a hotel before continuing their journey. By 7 p.m., 2 SUVs, a Ford Explorer and an Escape, pulled into our driveway. I glanced at the vehicles and felt my stomach tighten. Jody noticed my apprehension and reached for my hand. My truck was hidden in the garage, so no one knew I was there. Yet. "Who's with Josie?" Jody asked, her voice calm but curious. "That's Peter, his wife, my eldest daughter, Connie, with their baby, and Karen, my second oldest," I said quietly. "Are you ready for this?" she asked gently. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, lifting our youngest child into my arms. Jody opened the door and we stepped out together as a family. The last person my daughters expected to see was me. Karen froze, tears welling in her eyes before breaking into sobs. I handed my son to Josie and pulled Karen into a tight embrace. Connie, after passing her baby to Peter, walked over and hugged me as well. The weight of the years melted away in those moments. Standing side by side, my daughters had grown into beautiful young women. It was a sight I would never forget. "It's good to see you again, Peter," I said, extending a hand. We introduced everyone, and Jody served the dinner she'd prepared. Roast beef, mashed potatoes with gravy, fresh scones, Yorkshire pudding, string beans, and a warm apple pie for dessert. It was a meal that turned our reunion into something truly special. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my family back. After dinner, as the kids played, we settled into serious conversation. "Art, can I call you Dad?" Peter asked hesitantly. I nodded. "Of course." "Dad," Peter continued, "the DA has new evidence. It looks like Jody's ex's car was involved in your lawyer's fatal accident. Investigators have located the current owner and are conducting forensic tests on the paint. If the connection is confirmed, it could lead to manslaughter charges." He paused, then added, "The fire that destroyed your lawyer's office the same night has always been classified as arson. Surveillance footage places Jody's ex at the scene, watching the building burn. Willa and her attorney sealed your divorce documents, likely thinking no evidence remained. But now they've officially filed their lawsuit against you." Jody's eyes filled with tears. "All this time, I thought you were being overly cautious when you brought me here," she said softly. "But now I see you were protecting me. You asked Grandma so many questions, and I thought it was overkill. But now I understand. You needed to know exactly who we were dealing with." Josie nodded. "Willa and Tammy received notice of the countersuit on Thursday. They must have realized I've been helping you. That's why we left Paradise in such a hurry. I knew it wouldn't take long before they tried to maltreat me." "Grandma, your house is ready," Jody said warmly. "It's fully furnished. You only need to bring your clothes." "I packed most of what I need," Josie replied. "Connie is shipping the rest, including my personal items and antiques. I've given her power of attorney to sell the house. It's time for me to leave Paradise, and I'm not looking back." "I'll drive back with Peter and Connie," I said. "We'll rent a truck and haul everything out. It's time to see if our suspicions are correct." "What suspicions?" Peter asked, his expression darkening. "That the lawsuit is a ploy to draw me out," I replied. "Willa still has that $2 million accidental end-of-life policy, and I think they're hoping to cash in. The lawyer's end of life was likely a test run." Peter, Connie, Karen, and Josie sat in stunned silence as the realization dawned on them. "They were planning your end of life," Connie whispered, her voice shaking, "even before you left." I nodded solemnly. "That's why I left the way I did. I suspected their motives, but even my lawyer didn't believe me until it was too late." Peter excused himself to make a few critical phone calls. While he stepped out, I sat with my daughters, Jody and Josie, catching up on everything we'd missed in each other's lives. Jody, ever the archivist, dug out some old photos of me from when we first met. Connie and Karen laughed as they admitted they wouldn't have recognized me if they'd passed me on the street. When Peter returned, the room grew quiet as he shared the latest developments. "Willa will be taken into custody right after the holiday," he began. "She's being charged with 3 counts of theft for stealing the annuities meant for her children. We're slowing the process so she won't have a bond hearing for several days." He looked directly at me. "Dad, if you can fly in on Wednesday, rent a U-Haul, and make a few stops at familiar places to ensure you're seen, it'll force Willa to communicate from the city jail. Just tell anyone who asks that you're helping Josie pack up her things." Jody's expression turned stormy, and she fixed Peter with a glare. "Are you seriously telling me that the father of my children is your bait to lure my cousins into making a move? What guarantees can you give me that I won't get a call saying I've become a widow before we're even legally married?" Before I could respond, Jody sighed heavily, already knowing my answer. "You're going to do it, aren't you?" Without hesitation, Josie placed a calming hand on Jody's shoulder. "Sweetheart, Art has always been this way. He's never asked anyone to do something he wouldn't do himself. When you needed help escaping your ex, he didn't think twice. He wants us free of Willa and Tammy's grasp, once and for all." Jody gave a small, reluctant smile. "My only fear is that Art will walk right into the lion's den." Josie chuckled. "If Art were a boxer, he'd be the undefeated champion of the world. Those witches don't stand a chance. They never see him coming." I spoke up, trying to lighten the mood. "Relax, ladies. Peter's got my back. And if anything happens to me, he'll have to deal with Connie." Peter said nothing but gave a firm nod, his face showing he understood the risks. Later, while the women were busy in another conversation, Peter and I spoke privately. "The DA believes Jody's ex will act as soon as he hears you're back in town," Peter said. "He'll know you helped Jody leave him, and that will set him off." "How will he find out?" I asked. Peter leaned in slightly. Willa will pass the information to him through a planted informant in the city jail by Thursday morning. If he's caught in the act, do you think he'll confess? I thought for a moment before answering. He's a follower, not a leader, Peter continued. Whenever he's been caught before, he's owned up to it. He sticks with Willa and Tammy because they pull the strings and he doesn't know how to resist. The sign ahead read, "Welcome to Paradise, City of Refuge. Population, 34,823. It was a stark reminder of what I'd left behind. Paradise operated like its own little Wild West. The city council had long declared that federal laws didn't entirely apply here. Justice depended on who held the reins, and those in power bent the rules to suit their interests. Progressivism was what they called it, but in truth, the privileged paid the price for the sins of the powerful. 7 years had passed since I'd left, but Paradise hadn't changed much. Main Street had a fresh coat of asphalt, but otherwise it was frozen in time. I decided to make my first stop somewhere guaranteed to attract attention, Bob and Betty's Burger Bar. Thankfully, the diner was still standing, freshly painted but otherwise unchanged. I parked the U-Haul, stepped out, and walked toward the entrance. It was just past 11 a.m., the calm before the lunch rush. If I played this right, my presence would spread through town like wildfire. As I scanned the menu, I noticed familiar faces stealing glances. A few discreetly pulled out their phones. I waited for the server to approach with my coffee. "Are you ready to order?" she asked. "Is today's special still meatloaf, baked beans, and garlic mashed potatoes?" I asked casually. The server blinked, startled. "That's not on the menu. It's only for regulars." "Tell Jack that Art wants brown gravy and fried onions on the meatloaf," I said with a knowing grin. The server looked confused. "I'll just let him know myself," I added, standing. Ignoring her protests, I walked through the kitchen's swinging doors. The staff looked up in surprise as Jack, the owner, turned to face me. His face lit up with a smirk. "You dumb A," he said. "You're a couple of weeks early. Welcome back." He turned to the server. "Susan, bring his coffee to the back. Art's eating at the staff table so we can catch up." Jack was the son of the original owner, and we'd been friends for decades. We reminisced until just before the lunch rush. At one point, he had a staff member call his wife, Sasha, to the diner. When Sasha arrived, I stayed seated, waiting for her to notice me. She walked in, looking puzzled. "Jack, what's so urgent?" she asked. I stood and turned to her. Her face shifted from confusion to shock. "What's the matter, little sis?" I teased. "Didn't expect your mean old brother to come back?" Her composure crumbled, and she rushed into my arms. I held her tightly as years of distance melted away. Once she composed herself, Jack asked the staff to give us privacy. "Do Mom and Dad know you're back?" Sasha asked. "No," I replied. "Let's keep it that way for a few days." "Is this about Willa being taken into custody?" she pressed. I nodded. "Yes, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. I'll be staying under police protection while I'm here. They've reopened the case on my lawyer's end of life, and they think it's tied to the arson at his office." The looks on Jack and Sasha's faces said it all. Paradise had been buzzing with rumors about the district attorney's aggressive push to revisit old, unresolved cases ever since his appointment 3 years ago. "You're being used as bait," Jack said in a low voice. "They're setting a trap." "Exactly," I replied. "This whole plan is designed to bring them out of hiding. If it works, we'll have answers for the arson, the homicide, and plenty of other crimes. Willa's arrest, combined with my sudden reappearance, will force their hand." "What's driving all this?" Jack asked, his brows furrowing. "A $2 million accidental end-of-life insurance policy," I said simply. "On me." Sasha walked with me to the rental truck, keeping her voice low as Tammy's car pulled into the lot. Leaning closer, she asked, "Where are you staying?" "At Josie's old place," I said. "I'm helping pack up her belongings. She's moved to be closer to her granddaughter and my boys." Sasha's eyes widened in surprise. "Your boys?" I nodded with a small smile. "Jody and I have been together for 5 years. We have 2 boys, 3 and 4 years old." Her mouth opened slightly in shock. "How did you and Jody end up together?" "Josie and I stayed in touch after I left Paradise," I explained. "When Jody needed help leaving her marriage, Josie called me. I helped her move, and she stayed where I lived. We've suspected for a while that her ex might have been involved in my lawyer's end of life in the fire." "Do Willa and Tammy know you're onto them?" Sasha asked. "Not yet," I said, "but it won't take them long to figure it out." Tammy stepped out of her car and approached, her expression sharp and calculated. "Art," she began, her voice tinged with irritation. You need to drop part of your lawsuit. The DA is planning to charge Willa within the next 2 days. Unfortunately, my lawyer says that's not an option, I replied. Willa filed a new divorce petition accusing me of desertion, child abandonment, and unpaid support. Until the court rules on those claims, nothing changes. Tammy's frustration flared. How are we supposed to bail her out when you've frozen all the assets? I shrugged. Maybe your father could help. He could use his house as collateral. After all, you're both his daughters. Tammy glared at me but said nothing. Turning on her heel, she walked away in defeat. I watched her leave, knowing the noose was tightening. She's dreaming if she thinks their father will help, Sasha said, shaking her head. He cut ties with them when he learned the truth about Seth's parentage. He said more than once that they're just like their mother. Her words brought a faint smile to my lips. After saying my goodbyes, I climbed into the U-Haul and drove toward Josie's house, stopping along the way to pick up packing supplies. By the time I arrived, the sun was setting. I backed the truck tightly against the garage door, locked it, and went inside. Something felt off. Josie had said she'd leave the curtains open, but they were drawn. Uneasy, I texted Peter to ask if the police had been inside. He confirmed that officers had been through earlier and likely closed them. Somewhat reassured, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. A police officer greeted me immediately, extending a phone toward me. Mr. Racine, Peter Edwards wants to speak with you, the officer said. I took the phone. What's up, Peter? Peter's voice came through, direct and serious. Looks like the right people know you're back. Tammy already approached you, didn't she? She's probably trying to get you to release the lien on Willa's assets. She did, I said. I refused. Good, Peter replied. We recorded Willa and Tammy discussing how to adjust their plans. Jody's ex, Brad Press, came up repeatedly in their conversation. Willa told Tammy to inform Brad that you know where Jody is. That should push him into action. And it looks like it did. He showed up less than an hour ago. Willa also told him you're at Josie's house. The knot in my stomach tightened, but I kept my tone even. Understood. Keep me posted. The rest of the day was uneventful. I spent my time sorting Josie's belongings and packing boxes. Around 6:30 p.m., a pizza delivery arrived. When the driver asked if I was moving, I casually replied, just helping a friend pack up. The night was quiet until it wasn't. Around 11 p.m., Brad made his move. Using a tire iron, he jimmied the front door lock and slipped inside. A dim light in the kitchen guided him as he crept forward, a 9mm pistol tucked under his shirt. He found me sitting calmly at the table, sipping coffee. Hey, Art, Brad said casually, though his voice carried an edge. Willa and Tammy send their regards. I just need to know where Jody is. Setting my mug down, I locked eyes with him. Sorry, Brad, I don't share information with butchers or arsonists, he smirked. What makes you think I'm either? You've always struck me as someone who's easy to manipulate, I said evenly. How much of the $2 million insurance policy on me did they promise you? Brad's expression faltered. $2 million, he stammered. They told me it was $750,000. I chuckled darkly. Did you know Seth isn't even Willa's? He's Tammy's first husband's son. They've been playing games like this for years, manipulating people like you and me. My lawyer figured it out and sued them for everything they had. Brad's face turned ashen. That's why Willa's claims of desertion were a sham, I continued. The divorce was finalized ages ago. They just never filed the paperwork. They wanted to lure me back. Leaning forward, I spoke firmly. You're just another pawn in their game. Ask yourself, what's their plan for you? They tried to eliminate me once. What makes you think they won't do the same to you? Brad swallowed hard, realization dawning. I'm screwed, aren't I? You have a choice, I said. Work with the DA, testify against them, and get a lighter sentence. Or stay their pawn and take the fall. Brad hesitated, then slowly placed the pistol on the table. Call the cops, he muttered. I nodded toward the doorway. Brad, no need. They're already here. Connie watched her husband, Peter, pacing with his phone pressed to his ear, his expression a mix of focus and relief. Earlier, Peter had told her that her father was staying at Josie's house, but now, a late-night call had pulled them both out of bed. While Peter spoke, Connie headed to the kitchen and put the kettle on, preparing hot chocolate for the two of them. When Peter finally ended the call, a smile broke across his face. Your dad pulled off something incredible tonight, he said. Brad broke into the house intending to cause trouble, but your dad stayed calm, talked him down, and got him to confess everything. The undercover officers caught the whole thing on video. Connie froze, processing what she'd just heard. How in the world did Dad do that? She asked. her voice filled with disbelief. Peter shrugged. He told Brad a few hard truths, like the real story about Seth's parentage. Then he planted the idea that the insurance policy wouldn't pay out if it was tied to a homicide. I don't even know if that's true, but it was enough to make Brad second-guess everything. Rather than risk life without parole, he decided to cooperate. Aunt Josie always said Dad was quick on his feet, Connie said, shaking her head. But this, I never saw it coming. What does this mean for Mom and Tammy? If Brad testifies in court, your mom and Tammy will face charges for arson, manslaughter, and likely attempted homicide, Peter replied. Without hesitation, Connie picked up her phone and called Jody to share the news. Together, they made a plan. Josie would watch the kids for a few days, so Jody could fly out. Connie would pick her up from the airport once she got the flight details. After coordinating with Jody, Connie contacted her sister to fill her in while Peter got dressed, and left for the station to secure Brad's signed statement before morning. I didn't wake up until 8 a.m. The first thing I did was call Jack to arrange repairs for the front door. True to his word, Jack knew someone. Within half an hour, a handyman arrived and got to work. The new door, complete with fresh trim and a reinforced lock, was installed just as Connie's car pulled into the driveway. Jody was with her. The moment Jody stepped out of the car, tears streamed down her face as she ran toward me. I opened my arms, and she collapsed into them, overwhelmed. Brad was arrested last night, I told her gently. He surrendered without resistance. The officers had everything under control. I was never in any real danger. If that's true, why didn't you call me? Jody asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Why did I have to hear about it from Connie? It was almost 2 a.m. when everything settled, I admitted. I figured I'd call you first thing today. Wrapping my arm around her, I held her close. I promise, I whispered. I'll never put myself in that kind of situation again. After finishing the repairs, we packed Jody's luggage into the car and drove to Jack's restaurant for breakfast. There, we met Karen, Sasha, and my parents. The staff pushed 2 tables together to fit everyone, and my family warmly welcomed Jody. The meal was filled with laughter, stories, and delicious food. My parents were thrilled to hear about our 2 sons, Carson and Hunter, named after my grandfathers. They eagerly scrolled through photos on Jody's phone, marveling at how much the boys looked like me. My daughters shared the story of how they found Josie and discovered I was still alive. As breakfast ended, Peter arrived looking tired but determined. It's done, he announced. Willa and Tammy are in custody, and Brad has confessed to his intent to liquidate Art. He'll face charges for arson and manslaughter. Tammy and Willa will be charged with grand larceny, conspiracy to commit homicide, and fraud. Peter turned to Jody. The DA is working to finalize Art's divorce with the judge who handled the case before. They're pushing for an immediate resolution. Jody's eyes widened. Does this mean Art and I can finally marry? Peter nodded. The paperwork is already with the judge. They're trying to waive Willa's signature, skip the waiting period, and issue the divorce certificate. I smiled at Jody. Guess I need to buy a proper ring and propose officially. The table erupted in cheers and laughter. Tears filled Jody's eyes as she leaned into me, overcome with emotion. Before leaving, my parents invited us to dinner. We spent the afternoon packing before heading to their house, where they peppered Jody with questions about her life and how we came together. She recounted how I helped her leave a broken marriage and how we built a life together. The evening took a joyful turn when Peter and Connie arrived with the finalized divorce certificate. It's official, Peter declared. You're free. Jody beamed as she shared stories about our life and children. My mother, ever the planner, suggested we have a wedding before heading home. My father pulled Peter and me aside to discuss details over a couple of beers. Peter updated us on the case. Since Tammy's arrest, more information is pouring in. We've only scratched the surface. The DA's office is flooded with leads. I asked about Willa's common-law husband. Is he involved? Peter shook his head. He might lose his law license, but there's no solid evidence against him. He may end up raising their kids. Connie appeared, grinning. By the way, Jody's ring size is 6.5. Peter and I headed to the mall, where I bought a stunning 3-ring engagement set. Later, at home, I gathered everyone in the living room. Kneeling in front of Jody, I asked her to marry me. Caught off guard, she gasped, but quickly said, Yes. Cheers erupted as my father raised his glass. 7 years is too long not to toast my son and his bride. That Friday, we picked up our marriage license at City Hall. Jody was delighted to discover she fit perfectly into Connie's wedding dress. Jack agreed to be my best man, while Karen stood as Jody's maid of honor. Even the DA offered to officiate. Jody insisted I upgrade from my usual jeans, so I reluctantly bought a suit at Macy's. On Sunday, in my parents' backyard, we exchanged vows in an intimate ceremony surrounded by loved ones. Even the twins' father attended quietly. The day was simple yet moving, leaving many in tears. After the ceremony, my former father-in-law handed me an envelope. "This isn't a wedding gift," he said with a warm smile. "It's an early inheritance. The rest will go to your daughters." I thanked him and tucked it into my suit pocket, forgetting it until later. Family members recorded the ceremony and sent it to Aunt Josie so she could share in the moment. When asked about our honeymoon, Jody smiled. "After everything we've been through, it'll wait until Grandma is settled. We're planning a week in Florida and California, enjoying Disney with the kids. Family is what brought us here." The next day, as we prepared to leave, I handed Jody a note with a bank promissory for $100,000. The handwritten message read, "Thank you for setting things right. I always suspected the twins were involved in their mother's end of life. Watching them face justice will be satisfying for me and my granddaughters." Jody read it silently and slipped it into her purse. After tearful goodbyes with my parents and daughters, Jody and I climbed into the U-Haul. The drive home felt lighter, free of the burdens of the past. For the first time in years, the road ahead was clear, full of hope and promise for our future.